Shus Rabbi Cohen. The Torah tells us in this week's parsha that after Yaakov Avinu brings his family across Mavar Yabok, Yaakov is left alone. Vayivoser Yaakov levado. Why is Yaakov alone? So Rashi quotes from Chazal that he left Pachim Ketanim, he left small jugs on the other side of the bank, and he went back to retrieve them. Says the Gemara in Chulin and Daf Tzadi Aleph, Mikan letzadikim shechoviv aleim mamonam yosem migufam. From here we see that material possessions are chaviv, they're more beloved to tzadikim than their bodies. And why is that? V'lama kol kach es the Gemara lefi she'ein poshtim yedeyim begezel, because tzadikim don't take what doesn't belong to them. How do we understand the statement of Chazal? The possessions of tzaddikim are more beloved to them than their guf? Are they so materialistic? And what's the chiddush in saying that tzaddikim don't take what doesn't belong to them? Would we think that they would? Rav Yosef Zundel of Salant explains in his Sefer Be'er Yosef that Chazal meant to say that tzaddikim are willing to suffer physical pain to protect their possessions. They're willing to engage, to put in effort, to put in tircha, to put in yigia, to save their money, to save their possessions, because they take their money seriously. Why is that? Because tzaddikim understand that every small thing HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them, they need to achieve a sense of shleimus. It's destined for them. It's something special for them. Like the Gemara says in Yuma Daf Lamed Ches, that ein adam nogea b'muchen lechavero afilu kimelonima. A person can't touch what belongs to someone else, afilu kimelonima, even a hair's breadth. What one person deserves, what's destined for him, no one else can touch. Tzaddikim understand that every davar katan that a person has, they need. That person needs to achieve a sense of shleimus for his neshama. And that's why they're not willing to give up even on pachim ketanim. They're not willing to give up on any possession that they have. Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given them something, they know that their neshama needs that davar katan to achieve a sense of shleimus. And certainly they're not going to take anything that doesn't belong to them either. Not just gezel gomer, but even a chashash rochok, even money that doesn't seem completely kosher. They're not going to want to take that either. Because if it's not kosher, if it doesn't belong to them, if it's not meant for them, then there's no value to such money. That's the reason Yaakov Avinu was chozer on Pachim Ketanim. Because he understood that if HaKadosh Baruch Hu had given him these Pachim Ketanim, he needed them. He needed those Pachim Ketanim to achieve the shleimus that he was destined for. So he didn't want to give them up. He didn't want to squander them. He didn't want to lose them. This perspective that all of our material possessions have a purpose, they have a special tachlis, is a real game changer. It can have far-reaching consequences. First of all, if a person realizes that everything comes from Hashem, so he'll act differently in his professional life. He'll act with integrity, he'll act with honesty, because he realizes that he's not going to keep any money that he doesn't deserve. The Torah in Parshas Bahari, after it mentions the mitzvahs of Shemitah and Yovel, it talks about Hilchos Ono, the halachas of overcharging someone. What's the connection between the two? The answer is that someone who understands the message of Shemitah realizes that there's no value to overcharge someone. There's no purpose to it because he's not going to keep it anyway. What's the message of Shemitah? The Sefer Chinuch in Parshas Mishpatim in Mitzvah Pei Dalet says that the idea of Shemitah is to teach us that the land doesn't belong to us. There's a Bailim, there's an Adon Ha'aretz, as he calls it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's in charge. When the land produces when it produces a great bounty, that's not due to the intelligence or to the effort of the human being. Obviously, a person has to be mishtadel, he has to put in effort, but ultimately, brachos come min hashamayim. They're not due to the effort of the person. He shouldn't get carried away with what he did. To teach us that message, we're mafkir the karka. We give up our ownership of the karka once every 7 years to show that we understand there's a bailim. There's another bailim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the real owner of the karka. He's the one in control We're not in control. That's the message of Shemitah. And someone who gets that message, someone who internalizes the message of Shemitah, is not going to overcharge his friend. Because what's the point? He's not going to keep it anyway. Ki ha-mishpat le'Elokim hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in control. And he can right every wrong. He can even the score. You're not going to gain anyway from overcharging someone else. That's the message of Shemitah. There's a bailim. There's someone in control. Ein adam nogea b'muchan lachavero afilu kemelonima. Someone who realizes that everything is just a matnas Elokim will spend his time differently as well. He'll devote more time to Talmud Torah and to Tefillah because he realizes what's Iker and what's only Tafel. The Rambam in Ilchas Talmud Torah at the end of Perek Aleph describes how to fulfill the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And he writes, based on the Gemara in Kiddushin, that someone should divide his time, divide his days into 3 parts so that he'll be able to learn all the different parts of Torah, the Torah Shebiksav and the Torah Shebal Peh and the Svara, the Gemara that puts everything together. He should divide his time. How does he do that? Ketzad. The Rambam asks, how's a person supposed to do that? So he describes that if someone is a Bal Umnus, if someone is Osik b'Malacha, so what does he do? He is Osik b'Malacha for 3 hours a day, and he learns for 9 hours a day. So, of course, he should divide his 9 hours into 3 parts so that he'll be able to take advantage and gain from all the different segments of Torah. That's the picture of the ideal balabas that the Rambam had. Someone who would work for 3 hours a day and learn for 9 hours a day. Nowadays, I don't think there are many jobs that afford someone the opportunity to work for only 3 hours a day. Right? Most people are working 9 to 5. They're working for 8 hours a day if they're lucky. Most people are probably working for 9 hours a day. Halavai, we should be able to flip it, v'nafochu, that we should at least be able to learn for 3 hours every night. Work for the 9 hours and learn for 3 hours. But even if we're not learning for 3 hours every night, how do we look at that time? How do we look at the time that we are learning, the hour or more, whatever time that we can devote to Talmud Torah? Is that the ikar of our days? Is that what we're living for? That's really what we want. Do we look forward to go back to the Beis Medrash, to spend more time learning? Days that we have extra time, days that we have vacation, do we spend more time in learning? That shows what the ikar really is. Someone who realizes that everything is just a matnas Elokim will devote more time to Talmud Torah. He'll devote whatever time he can because he realizes that's what life itself is all about. How do we daven? Do we invest in our tefillah? Do we come early to shul, even if it's only 2 minutes early? Do we come early to shul to prepare ourselves for the davening? Do we daven at a reasonable pace, thinking of what we're saying, or do we just get through it? Do we run through it on double speed? Do we stay to the end of davening? To the end of davening? We don't check out early? What does our davening look like? Are we investing in davening? You know, in the field of computer science, there's a data structure called a stack. And there are different concepts that are associated with a stack. They talk about LIFO and FIFO and last in, first out, first in, first out. I think the operative principle when it comes to tefillah is to try to be a philo. To be a philo, first in, last out. That's what it's about. Or actually, early. First in to be early to tefillah and last out. Are we investing in our tefillah? Are we investing in our tefillah? Is it something that gives us chiyus? You know, the Mishnah in Brachos at the beginning of the 5th parak says that the Chasidim Rishonim would be shohim shoah achas before the tefillah. They would prepare for tefillah for an hour, and they would daven for an hour, and they would unwind, they would disconnect from the upper spheres that they connected to in the tefillah for an hour after davening. So if you do the math, it comes out that they were davening or they were osek in some kind of hachana for davening for 9 hours a day. So the Gemara in Brachas on Lamed Beis says, how could that be? If they were osek in tefillah for 9 hours a day, heich tarasan mishtameres, heich malachtan mispareches, how could they function? They wouldn't have time for davening. They didn't have time to work. So how could they support themselves? Zog the Gemara, the Chasidim Harishonim were different. The Gemara says, Mitoch shechasidim heim torasa mishtameres u'malachtan misbareches. Because they were Hasidim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu arranged that their Talmud Torah was miskayim. They were able to learn. They were able to accomplish in a shorter amount of time what most people take a lot longer to accomplish. And Malachtam, their work was also misbareches. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave them extra bracha. Because when someone understands what tefillah is all about, when they understand that the bracha is min hashamayim, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides extra bracha. When someone invests in tefillah because they understand without tefillah there's nothing, so then HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides the bracha that they need. He provides the bracha in much less time. Look, this is a high level to reach. Chasidim Arishonim. But the concept of investing in one's tefillah, that's a concept that's shaykh to everyone. We have to work on that, to try to invest in our tefillah, to realize that working hard in tefillah is the best investment that we can possibly make. Someone who realizes that everything comes min hashamayim will spend his money differently as well. He'll appreciate that his money is given to him as a pikadon, and he'll buy what he needs. He'll buy what he needs to serve Hashem. And he'll be happy to give tzedakah. He'll be happy to give tzedakah because he realizes that's the Ratzon Hashem. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. He wants us to give to people who are more disadvantaged, people who have less than us. The pasuk in Parshas Truma says, Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu li truma. And the Welt asks, what does that mean? V'yikchu li truma. It should have said v'yitnu li truma. The Alshich answers that the pasuk says v'yitnu li truma, v'yikchu li truma, because it wants to teach us that really when a person gives tzedakah, when he gives to a shul or to any tzarech mitzvah, he's not actually giving anything. He's really just returning what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him, because the money doesn't really belong to him anyway. The money isn't yours. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's money. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's taking back through the tzedakah, he's taking back the pikadon that he gave us. The Torah says v'yikchu li truma because if it were to have said v'yitnu li truma, we'd think that we're actually giving something, but we're not really giving anything at all. We're just giving back what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given to us. Someone who understands that the money isn't his, but rather it's given for a tachlis, it's given for a certain purpose, it's given to him to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a little bit easier to give tzedakah. It's not easy, but it's a little bit easier to give tzedakah. Because when a person has the right perspective, then he realizes that by giving tzedakah, he's not really giving up something, but rather he's just giving back. But it's really more than that. The truth is that giving tzedakah is the best investment that a person can make. The Gemara in Bava Basra tells a story about Munbaz HaMelech, who came from the line of the Chashmonaim. Once during a Shnas Batzoros, during a drought, he opened up his personal treasure houses and those of his family, and he distributed his wealth to the needy, to the Aniyim. And his family was very annoyed at him. They were upset. They criticized him. They complained to him, Havosecha gonzu v'yosifu al shalavosam v'yatam evazbezam. Your ancestors gathered a lot of wealth. They accumulated wealth, and you're squandering it all. Gemara says, Munbaz answered them, Avosai gonzu lamata v'ani gonazti lamala. Avosai gonzu la'acherim v'ani gonazti la'atzmi. My ancestors gathered wealth lamata, down here in this world, but I'm accumulating wealth for the next world. My ancestors gathered wealth only for others, for their descendants, because you can't take material possessions with you. But I'm accumulating wealth for myself that I am going to take with me to the next world in the form of the mitzvahs and the masim tovim that I get from the tzedakah that I fulfill, the tzedakah that I give. Munbaz understood that giving tzedakah isn't really a sacrifice. It's actually the best investment that a person can make, because a person doesn't really give tzedakah. He takes the schar that the mitzvah of tzedakah gives him. This perspective that a person sees, a person appreciates that everything that he has in life really has a tachlis, it's all there only to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it can change everything. It can make a person act in a totally different way. But the truth is, the real benefit from having this kind of healthy perspective on money is not just that a person is going to spend his time in a more productive way, and he'll spend his money more properly, and he'll act with integrity. That's not the real benefit. The real benefit from this perspective is in the simchas hachayim that it gives a person. We know that the Avos were all benched with the midah of kol. By Avram Avinu it says, Hashem beirach es Avram bakol, and Yitzchak Avinu says, va'ochel mikol. And Yaakov Avinu in this week's parsha says, yesh li kol, bakol, mikol, kol. All the Avos were blessed with kol. What is this midah of kol? Different mefarshim offer various interpretations. The Ramban in Parshas Chayesara writes, after he discusses some of the different perushim, he says, bakol is a sod haTorah. It's a secret of the Torah, the Ramban says. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a midah of kol. Like it says in the Pasuk, Ani Hashem ose kol. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has this midah of kol. And he benched the Avos, he gave this midah of kol to the Avos. There certainly is some kind of a sod nistar in the midah of kol, but perhaps b'derech nigla we can explain. What is kol? Kol really is a sense of shleimus. It's a shleimus, it's a simcha. It's a feeling of inner contentment and satisfaction that a person has. A sense of harmony. When things seem right, they seem like they're together in the proper midah, the proper balance. Each one of the Avos was benched with the midah of kol. They had a simchas hachayim, they had a menuchas hanefesh. How were they zoche to this bracha, to the simchas hachayim of the midah of kol? Because each one of the Avos understood that every person in this world has a special tafkid. Every person has a role to play. And all material bracha is not a tachlis unto itself. It's not an end unto itself. It's only a means to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there's no value. There's no purpose in running after money. It's not going to get us anywhere. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give us what we need to serve Him. The goal is to focus on the ikr, not the tofel. To focus on Torah and mitzvahs. And someone who has that perspective, who understands the purpose of material possessions, such a person is zoche to real osher. Not osher with an ayin, but osher with an aleph. Inner contentment and satisfaction, true osher. That's the real osher in life. That's what the Avos had. In Parshas Bechukosai, the Torah tells us, what's the bracha in Bechukosai Telechu? If we do everything right, we learn Torah and we observe mitzvahs, HaKadosh Baruch Hu guarantees us all the brachas of the world. What's the bracha? V'achaltem lachmechem lasova. You'll eat and you'll feel a sevia, you'll feel satiated. What does it mean, lasova? What does it mean to have sevia? Rashi says, ochel kima u'misbarech besoch meyav. It means a person eats a little bit and it's misbarech besoch meyav. He feels satisfied. You don't need a lot to be satisfied. You can have a little bit. But if it's misbarech besoch meyav, if you appreciate what you have, you can feel satiated. HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make a person feel satiated, even with a little bit. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, Hakina v'yataiva v'yakavod motzian es ha'odam min ha'olam. Kina, taiva, and kavod, they take a person out of the world. What world? Some of the Mefarshim say it means that they take a person out of his own world. He doesn't appreciate the brachas that he has. They eat away at him. Kina, he feels jealous for someone. He has a taiva, he can't get enough. He doesn't enjoy his own life. It takes him out min ha'olam, from his own world, because he doesn't appreciate the brachas that he has. Ezeu osher hasameach bechalka. The ultimate usher is one who appreciates that everyone has their own chelik. That every chelik that a person has is given to him in Hashemayim. It's a matnas Elokim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him exactly what he has, exactly what he needs to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And someone who has that perspective is the true usher, someone who has that perspective, it's a little bit easier. It's not so easy, but it's a little bit easier to be Sameach B'Chelkam. It's a little bit easier to feel the Osher with an Aleph, to really feel that you have an Osher with an Ayin, because you understand the purpose of all of the possessions that you have. Look, it's not easy to develop this kind of perspective because we live in a world that's so engulfed in materialism that we naturally get caught up in the money race. It can take a lifetime of effort to disconnect from the perspective of the outside world and to look at things differently. But the model of Yaakov Avinu and that of all the Avos teaches us the true happiness and fulfillment doesn't come from running after materialism, but rather it comes from appreciating that all the brachas that we have are gifts from Hashem.